Hey, did you hear about walnut whips?
Uh-oh. What's happened to walnut whips?
Hang on. Is this that they're not going to have walnut in them anymore?
Yep.
What?
Hello and welcome to episode 204 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 30th of August. I am Tom Francis, and with me here today are...
Tom Senior.
And...
Philip War.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
We didn't keep like a good list of news this week, but there was one big piece that we didn't have any trouble remembering.
The Vermintide 2.
Very good. Two big pieces. I can't believe there's like that actually did surprise me.
Yeah.
Didn't that just come out like
There's
yesterday?
also a new IP from Don't Nod that they won't talk about until 2018.
Yeah. Do they remember me, people?
Yes,
me?
but also Life is Strange.
Oh, right, yeah.
And
God,
Vampire,
I forgot those were the same
which no
studio.
one is. I mean, I haven't met
Did that come
anyone
out?
who's excited about that. No, it's in November.
That's the one where you're a doctor vampire. And
You're a doctor
it's like-
vampire, and I think it's supposed to be like, the conflict between your Hippocratic oath and your urge to drink the blood of
It
everyone.
seems like the Hippocratic Oath says you shouldn't drink that blood, but is there some wiggle room?
Well, I think it's about like whether you as a doctor can do enough good to just, who knows?
So what's their new one they won't talk about?
So they have buddied up with Namco Bandai to work on this new thing that they basically they're talking around it because I think they don't want to distract from the other stuff that they're working on, but they released a couple of bits of concept art for it and it looked a bit like, you know, the kind of murder mystery that ends up with some like farmland scenes, you know, where maybe people find a body or something. It reminded me a lot of that kind of thing, like
Right.
Silent Witness things, but apparently it's set in some fictional town in America. But then like all of the stuff that I saw them or Namco people talking about was very much more on the marketing side of things. Like, it makes sense that we set it in America because global marketing and
Let us explain this
audiences.
innovative decision.
So, but I think they're going to talk more about that in 2018. So once Vampire is out, and I think they also said they'd be talking more about the Life is Strange thing in 2018 as well.
Some people are actually going to think that was the other bit of big news that we had in
bits of
mind.
news.
It's so true. I just thought I'd like add it in while I remembered.
Yeah, it turns out we've got lots of news.
Vermintide 2 is set in, Everybody's Gone to Rapture, but that looks a bit, all they've released of it are a bunch of screenshots of beautiful countryside. And this is, by the way, the first game is about fighting giant rat men called Skaven in a very dark city.
Presumably the second one has to also be about fighting a giant tide of rat men.
Yeah, I think they tied their hands a bit there because they swapped it out for
They
some skeletons.
tied their hands a bit.
No, no.
I don't know, did they was the original game that you were, I don't know, like underground or something and then ended with you like breaking through of the sewers into a bright shining new land that
Oh, I don't
is
know.
also populated by
I got
rat
bored of
men.
it before that happened.
See, I don't know, I'm just trying to help them out.
Yeah, it's
The
set in a really
setting.
dark place, and now it's going to be set in a sunny place. That's all I could think of they could do with that formula, because if it's just this Ratman again, I don't know how it's going to be very interesting.
They go to a wintry place.
That's true.
That's the
Or a
third one.
desert. All of the biomes.
Yeah, all of the video game places.
Winter is usually saved for the expansion pack.
Yeah, it's true.
Because it's like, it's different enough that they can market it, but it's not so different that they have to make everything from scratch.
They could have a rat pirate game, because then they could, at some point make the joke about rats leaving a sinking ship. But, also just make it about rat pirates.
I know this is hardly the time for humour, lads, but I can't help but notice. We're a lot like a bunch of rats leaving a sinking ship, in that that's literally what's
irony.
happening.
They could do a MOBA and call it Rat Dota. There we go. So what is the big news? The actual news of the week?
Mark Laidlaw, writer of Half-Life, posted a synopsis of a plot for Half-Life 2 Episode 3, which,
Well, technically he remembered a dream that he had and wrote it up.
So we won't be talking about the contents of this in terms of like what he wrote happened, or would have happened, or would have going to happen. Because I haven't read it. Pippa hasn't read it. I haven't read it very intentionally because I don't want to spoil anything, which may sound ridiculous given that this is someone who's left Valve now and, will not be involved with this and presumably is publishing it, under the impression that it's not going to be used in any meaningful way. But all the same, I just want to like stay completely virgin for, any future Half-Life stuff. And it's hard to believe that there'd be zero overlap between, if they ever do a future Half-Life thing, that would not overlap at all with whatever the writer of Half-Life thought it should happen. But yeah, that was a surprising turn of events.
Yeah, normally there are sort of NDAs and sort of things that stop people from doing this sort of thing.
Yeah,
Maybe
I wonder.
It expired.
Yeah, possibly. Gotta be right.
Because it's been about 10 years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So.
I don't know anything about, like, his relationship with Valve, but I thought it was amicable. So I think, I would imagine, that he would have run it by them and said, hey, I want to do this. Can I? Didn't feel like a sort of angry, screw Valve leak or anything, right?
Do you think it was the catharsis that the internet needed to finally let
Yeah, a lot
Half-Life
of people, I heard that from a lot of people,
finally just
sad that we didn't get it, but glad to have read it.
Yeah. I was going to say, because I haven't played the Half-Lives to completion. I started the first one. But obviously I wasn't playing it in the time, in the moment while it was having its moment. And so, it was very much marooned from context. And so it didn't really have the same pull or appeal. And then I think I started to play Half-Life 2 because the orange box was a thing. But I just sort of, I got a certain amount of the way in, but again, it was just like, okay, well, I get it, but it's not, I don't have a personal attachment here. But I would say I really like, his, Instagram. He does amazing pictures. Like, there's some really cool stuff on there. So
cool.
I just really enjoy, like, what he does in a, like, personal capacity. So, yeah.
I have had a weird thought, which is that, Half-Life 1 was 1998. Half-Life 2 was 2004, I believe. Is that right? So 6 years between them. And, a radioactive material that's decaying emits a particle on a semi-random basis, but the average of that is where you get the half-life from. And so I'm wondering if the amount of half-life left was halved, how long would it be before the next particle was emitted? And I guess it would be 12 years after 2004, which would be 2016. So not quite right.
He's late. He's late. That'd have been perfect.
I don't think it makes any sense anyway, because emitting a particle would not halve the amount of remaining material unless there was only two
well, hang on,
particles
it depends who you mean is the particle.
Like, I'm thinking a game release is one particle.
I see. Because I wondered if you meant, like, if you're counting a writer as a particle.
Mark Laidlaw was emitted today.
Well, like, how in GCSE
by
maths and things, they're like, you take the point to be a particle, like, even if, and it's not allowed to have specific bits of mass just to, like, simplify the entire endeavour. Yeah,
you spend all your models revolve around things that not only do not exist, but couldn't possibly exist.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, let's not take into account any of its, like, other properties than the one that we want you to focus on for this equation.
So you read it, Tom?
I skimmed it, but I didn't want to hurt my own feelings with it, really. Because if it was just terrible, or if it really made me want Half-Life again, then it would have just made me sad. So I just sort of skimmed it and got an impression of it, and it's inventive and cool. I think it would have been like a really interesting thing to do with it. But now I think it is a little bit of closure. I didn't even really need closure, but I think a lot of people on the internet have wanted it for so long. It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah. It's funny. I'm not really bothered in any ongoing way about the lack of Half-Life stuff. It's like, at the time I was really excited to get to see the next episode, and I guess there was probably like one or two moments over the following years when I thought, oh, I would like to know what happens there. And I'm sad that I haven't yet. But after that, you know, I still want to play it, but doesn't cause me ongoing pain. I don't like wake up in the night thinking, but I don't know. You know, it's, I think for me, like cliffhangers have a very short-term effect. Like after about a week, I've forgotten what I was waiting to hear about. And, I have to remind myself that episode 2 had a cliffhanger at the end of it. And even that almost wasn't like a major event happened. It wasn't really like a huge, question that was raised exactly. I guess that's not the definition of cliffhanger, is it?
But you know there'd be a huge amount of like fallout emotionally, especially for people you're attached to at the end of
yeah.
So I guess you want to see what happens next.
Certainly does, yeah. Strongly lead into a moment that you don't get to see.
I feel like I probably would have, if I were Mark, I would have probably lost my temper years and years ago, because I lose my temper over people leaving comments on Valve-related articles that just make Half-Life 3 confirmed jokes all the time. So can you imagine what it would be like being the person who wrote Half-Life, just having to deal with that on everything that you did? I think I would probably have just lost my temper and just gone, they all died. Oh!
One of my least favorite things on the internet is people saying, for any kind of news, X confirmed, ? Like, if you have to put question mark on it, then no, it's not confirmed, is it? The whole point, that is already a piece of news that is speculatively out there. The only further thing that can happen is for it to be confirmed. If it was confirmed, you wouldn't be asking the question because it would be confirmed. That's what the word confirmed means.
People are bad on the internet.
Oh, I figured that out.
In conclusion, I don't think that's news. I don't think we're allowed to pass that off as news.
It's eternal human truth at this stage.
Move it to a different section. The internal human truth section.
Oh, God.
What internal human truths have you been playing, Tom?
The truth that is XCOM 2 War of the Chosen, which is the first major expansion for XCOM 2. Wodka, yeah. Yeah. I like that. Vodka.
Sounds like a mid-European liquor made with herbs.
Oh. Like the kind of vodka that you buy from Lidl or something.
I couldn't figure out if that was curiosity or disgust there, Pip.
I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Botanicals.
Oh yeah, botanical vodka.
XCOM War of the Chosen is about 3 alien bosses called the Chosen, who are these kind of bright blue-pink creatures.
Who chose them?
The Advent hierarchy, like the chief aliens of whoever's running. Chief aliens, as they're definitely called.
Advent are they the alien council on Earth, or is this the human alien collaboration council?
So,
I've forgotten everything I knew.
I think Advent is actually the human alien kind of ruling class on planet Earth now. The aliens have taken over, and they're ruled by mysterious alien overlords that may or may not see, higher up in the game. But they've appointed the Chosen, who are these 3, 12-foot tall, gangly fools who each have their own specialties. There's the assassin, who can, shoot your guys from really far away, and, they can also summon people. There's there's a psychic one, and there's a sneaky huntery one. And the idea is that they torment you throughout your XCOM 2 campaign. So it's the same campaign, but with loads of extra shit to deal with, basically. And whenever they appear, it's their job to try and daze one of your units and then steal them. So they can kidnap your soldiers and imprison them, in order to gain knowledge, which gets them extra abilities, which they can use to sap your resources. They gain new abilities on the battlefield, and eventually they gain the ability to hunt down the Avenger, which is your spaceship base craft, and, attempt to destroy you, basically.
Huh. So all 3 of them try to do that?
They do, but they are in competition with one another, which is the War of the Chosen. Because they're basically, it's that thing where you get 3 desperate creatures and you throw a stick in the middle and watch them kind of battle it out. So they're alien
yeah, I remember that from earlier today.
As happens, in all our lives. And so basically their alien overlords have told them to prove themselves, and, only one could be chosen for ascension or whatever. So they all set up different, they set up shop in different parts of the world map. And if you take a mission in their zone, there's a chance they'll show up in your mission, basically. So it's semi-predictable. And they have randomly generated weaknesses and strengths as well. And so one might be weak to explosion damage, and they're all definitely weak to one of the new Resistance faction heroes. Because in addition to the Chosen, there are also 3 rebel factions who are awesome and the best thing about the expansion. There are the skirmishers, who are human alien hybrids who have turned against the aliens, and they are like super fast. They have grappling hooks and a kind of like submachine gun that makes them really good up close, and they're really super mobile. There are reapers who hate the skirmishers because they mistrust them because they're aliens. That's a bit of friction there. And they've got sniper rifles they can move and shoot. Every time they do an action, there's a 50% chance they just won't break stealth. So they can stay in stealth for ages. Plus they've got some amazing abilities that they can do and still stay in stealth. For example, they can throw a claymore somewhere, and then whenever you want, they can shoot it and it explodes, and they never have to break stealth to do that. And what's even better is they can throw the claymore, and someone else on your team can shoot that claymore as whenever you want. So if you can use it to like block off areas, use it to destroy buildings. All of the classes have like really inventive abilities that feel very different to everything else you have in XCOM 2 and even in XCOM and Unknown in its expansions as well. The third class, probably the most ridiculous, are the Templars, who are psychic warriors who can unsheath psychic blades from their wrists. And their thing is that they run out and they like beat the crap out of someone with the blades. And if they hit them, which they always do, it seems, they get a free move afterwards. They can dart back into cover, so they can just basically hit and run, and they're just insanely powerful. There's a move where, as they hit people, they get more powerful, and they can unleash even more powerful psychic spells and stuff. So this is just mad stuff for XCOM. It's like stuff that none of your other soldiers can do. They're really, really different. And as you befriend each resistance group, you get one each of the soldiers, but as you do missions for them, you can also start recruiting them at will and build these just ridiculous, insane super squads, to beat back the Chosen and defeat the enemy.
Cool.
Is it worth playing like vanilla XCOM 2? Like, is this a new game plus type thing, or is it like you should go and just play it as part of the game now that it exists?
You should definitely play vanilla XCOM 2 a few times before doing War of the Chosen, because it's vanilla XCOM 2 but with loads of extra crap to deal with. So you kind of need to have a knowledge of the tech tree and what happens in the story and how to deal with it before you go into War of the Chosen.
So it's more New Game Plus-y kind
Yeah, very much for experienced XCOM players, like people who have played at least like a couple of campaigns, I'd say, and they're used to all the gear arcs and stuff. Because it kind of, there's a bit of friction there with it, and part of the problem I had with it is that it is the old campaign and the new stuff is kind of slotted in between it. So you're doing a lot of the old stuff again. You're doing the same old missions and the same old kind of, researching the same things. And the critical missions are pretty much the same, though the Chosen might turn up and mix it up a bit. And so it's equal parts quite familiar, but also, and quite boring in that respect, but also you keep playing it to see all the new stuff, which is super, super exciting. I think I would prefer it if they'd integrated the Chosen into a new campaign, with like a similar length or a similar arc. Because I find that the new stuff actually bloats out the game in a way that makes it more arduous to play. You fight a lot more encounters in my experience, because there's just so much more stuff to deal with in terms of the aliens are still doing the Avatar project, which is XCOM 2's big kind of doomsday clock that's ticking up. So you're constantly having to beat that down while also taking on the Chosen, while also fending off dark events, which are the thing that the Advent can do to cripple your resources. And the aliens have their own version of, the Chosen have their own version of their dark events where they can like sap your resources and stuff. So you have to deal with that as well. Soldiers that are kidnapped, you have to go and break out of jail. The Chosen and Advent are doing kind of terror attacks on your territories. And all of this shit is happening at the same time, basically. And that means that, like, a day in XCOM War of the Chosen feels like twice as much work, at least, as a day in XCOM 2.
I was already feeling in XCOM 2 that, like, I'm just trying to move my ship over to go get those supplies that have dropped. And, like, I get 3 centimeters in on screen and there's a big pop-up thing of, like, oh, this is happening over there, you gotta deal with that. And it's like, okay, we'll fly over there and deal with that. And then I get out of that and then immediately there's another thing. Oh, you gotta fly over the other side of the world to deal with that. And then you deal with that and then, like I can barely get to the supplies before the next supply drop happens because there were so many interruptions.
The good news is they've slightly ameliorated that by just giving you loads more ways to get supplies. So you're still getting those supply drops where you have to fly over and suck them up with a big crane or whatever the hell's going on with that mechanic. But you can also do covert actions where you basically like devote a couple of soldiers to a mission and they'll go away for a week and they'll come back with a scientist or an engineer or supplies. Or they'll get you some intel on where the Chosen are hiding, that kind of thing. And there are also more missions that give you supplies. So that's slightly less frustrating, but there's still way more stuff being thrown at you all the time, it feels like. And it really, in my experience with the game so far, it really slows down like the technology progression, because stuff can take 10 to 15 days to research, like good stuff. And that is a lot, that is many hours of play in War of the Chosen, whereas in XCOM 2 it wasn't.
Right.
I always felt that XCOM 2 was kind of, it was always throwing bricks at you, and that was kind of the style of the game. It was almost like a survival game, basically, where you're constantly on edge, having to perform well until you get a grip, and then you slowly bring the fight back to them and eventually end up overpowered, which is the classic XCOM power arc. Whereas that just feels like so much longer and more grueling in a way in War of the Chosen. But I think that the new toys and the cool new classes and all of the really fun new stuff they put in more than makes up for it. Like the ability to make propaganda posters of your soldiers, which is really cool. It's really, really fun. Got a nice little editor in there, and you can click on any of your soldiers at any time and make a poster of them. At the end of every mission, you can click a button and it will show your squad in like a badass pose, and you can change their pose and the backgrounds and put your own custom messages on them. And whenever your soldiers level up, it automatically generates them. And so you get like an album of like, soldier shots that I just flicked through mine earlier today, and it brought back memories of the campaign. Like, I remember that time Phil Savage got horribly murdered by a cyborg alien. And I remember that time that Sam Roberts leveled up and gained like, the murder killer catchphrase or whatever. It does all this characterful stuff, and your soldiers can form bonds now if they perform well together on the battlefield, and they're compatible. You can officially buddy them up.
Oh yeah, who got bonds on the PC Gamer team?
Actually, like, it was quite sad really, because none of my ordinary soldiers bonded, but the two super soldiers, like the Templar and the Reaper bonded. Like the two special ones got together.
Oh, no.
And it was
They've got an
kind of
elite
awkward.
club.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, that's the worst.
And they were doing stuff like on the battlefield. That means that they can give each other actions, and all the other soldiers are like, oh, look at, get those guys, with their special powers and their extra abilities for being buddies.
Super magic special friends.
Anyone can be buddies with anyone, and weirdly you can train their buddiness up by putting them in a room together. I don't know what that process is, but
just punch each other and tell jokes.
Trust exercises and things, I assume.
Oh, a little trust fall in XCOM. That's never going to end well, actually.
No.
That's just the kind of animation they would do, actually, because they have loads of really cute character animation. Like if there's if one of your soldiers gets injured and you see them in the med bay, they'll often be one of your other soldiers kind of like encouraging them to get better. And
Aww.
Yeah.
Doesn't it also depend sort of what you like doing in XCOM 2? Because I think Adam Smith from RPS was saying that it cancels out your ability to mod the game. So if the mods were something that you were particularly into, like War of the Chosen, kind of means that
I'm wondering
that's
if it
all
does shut down the mods, or whether basically they don't want people to be trying XCOM 2 mods with War of the Chosen because they won't be compatible, basically.
Yeah, maybe not.
I wonder whether there'll be like a separate mod scene that will come up with it. Because
they've always been very pro mod, haven't they?
They really have. Yeah,
like they buddied up with the Long War people, like for a semi-official thing. So yeah, I'd be surprised if it was a long-term thing, but it's kind of, I think it was interesting to hear that because it was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I kind of think I assumed that was a housekeeping thing where they don't want people to try putting these gear mods into War of the Chosen where there's loads of new gear that might break the game and give people a bad experience.
They're also, they've added some of the, things that mods added.
Yeah.
Why can't I say that more elegantly? Like the thing of when you plan to move somewhere, it tells you whether you'll be flanking people.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so the quality of life mods probably wouldn't apply. Like,
well, some of them I'm sure would.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is one of the best little updates. Whenever you mouse over a square, you can hold down tab and it'll show a little alien faces, and if they're yellow, it means that's a flanking position. Also means they probably have a flanking position on you if you move there, so it's like a defensive offensive thing. It's just a vital piece of information in the game. Other stuff they haven't fixed. So for example in stealth, you still get these like really bullshit situations where you'll move someone up to the edge of the fog of war, but if you're in stealth mode before stealth's been broken, all of the squares on the map, on the grid, on the floor grid, are color-coded. Red ones are overseen by an enemy and blue ones are safe. But you can move to a blue one on the edge of the fog of war. The fog of war can move 3 squares to reveal a turret, and then the game puts down the turret's field of view, and it breaks. It's total bullshit because, that soldier can see that turret. It's fine. And I don't see any disadvantage just showing them as red and letting you know that there's an enemy up ahead, because once stealth is broken, it's a special ability to get back into stealth that only a few units have. So why not let players have the cool badass sneaking up on the aliens and breaking stealth and with loads of Overwatch moment, and just give them the information? I don't understand it, whether it's design decision or something that's just hasn't been implemented.
So they haven't fixed that one?
No. And also because the stuff like the prison breakout missions are like, they're dedicated stealth missions. So you send like 3 dudes to break out someone. So it's a smaller squad as well. And that's when it really happens a lot, because that is just a big compound full of turrets, and turrets are the most boring enemies that they just sit there and ruin your time basically. And they can't even do anything. They just, break your stealth, and it's annoying. So yeah, unfortunately they've not fixed that, which is irritating. But the new stuff is still really good, including the zombies they've added. There are lost cities full of lost humans, who are basically zombies. They've just been exposed to alien magic for too long. They've got a bit wrong. And now they just have to charge at you in droves. They come infinitely. It seems like you can never defeat the lost. They're just like weather on the map. They'll just keep on coming. If you use a grenade or an explosion, even more will come through the sides of the map. They come in like squads of like 5 or 6. And I was in one amazing fight where a Chosen had shown up and I had to rescue a VIP. There's only one street back to my extraction point, and all the Lost were charging from everywhere. There's so many Lost arrived that the Chosen started getting swamped, even if he was still trying to kill me, because the Lost attack aliens as much as they attack you. And the Chosen had mind-controlled PC Gamer editor Samuel Roberts, who was a grenadier, and Sam turned around and grenaded the VIP and 2 of my other guys, and the explosion drew like 20 zombies.
Oh my god.
And they had to like limp back as all these zombies came in, and then Sam's mind control broke, and he was in the middle of the zombie horde, and they were all just like crowding around him. So I had my like 3 wounded dudes with sniper rifles and assault rifles picking off zombies as he was like rushing back to the extraction point. And the neat thing about zombies in XCOM 2 War of the Chosen is that they're really easy to hit, because they never take cover, so they're probably like 80% chance of a hit. And whenever you get a hit, you get another free action. So the idea is that you keep on killing until you've out of clip, and then that's the end of your turn. Then the next guy just keeps on running until they're out of clip. And it creates this kind of zombie fantasy where they're backing away and just kind of like, emptying all their guns and then drawing pistols and then reloading desperately and that kind of thing. It's really, really, really well executed. And there aren't too many of them for them to lose their novelty, especially when like these weird 3-way scenarios start happening. It's a really cool way of demonstrating that like XCOM 2 or XCOM as a formula still has more in it to give in terms of scenarios and types of combat, which is something that I didn't expect from the expansion at all.
Does the bonding stuff, does that actually, is that fed by particular actions you do on the field, or is it just random?
I can't tell. It seems to just be random. It seems to be like, it's described almost like affinity, as though these 2 people happen to have a spark for some reason. Right. Though it's awesome once 2 soldiers are bonded, if they're both on the field and one of them gets killed, the other one goes into a frenzy and just empties their clip onto all the aliens around them, which is brilliant.
That's great.
Yeah, well done for thinking of that, Crisis.
I always wanted it to be a bit more responsive to what I do in the field. Like my stories about my soldiers always came from that. It would be like that time when this soldier saved that soldier. Now in my head they have a bond, and previously XCOM didn't acknowledge that in any way. And now that it does, I was kind of hoping it would play off those same events. Like if you carry an injured soldier to safety, those 2 should have a bond, right? But I wonder if they did stay away from that, I imagine it's probably because it was exploitable. Once you know the rules, then it means that it's always advantageous to just, intentionally incapacitate one of your own people and then carry them back to the ship.
And everyone's in love now. They've all been through the same devastating experience.
Which I caused.
I wonder if there would be like an opposite version where they're like, you'd have the 2 people that were just so passive aggressive towards each other the entire time, like really reluctant to save each other unless absolutely necessary, never want to sit next to each other on a drop, just like, oh, for God's sake. That
would be kind of great too. Like someone's bleeding to death and the only person with the medkit is the one who hates them, and they have to kind of grudgingly go over and save them.
Like eye rolls as they administer the medkit.
It's this sort of like touching moment where they have to show that, I guess I do care about this person.
Like really gruff and really cross.
That's what they'll say, like, don't ever forget I did this for you.
Yeah.
Don't ever tell anyone I did this for you.
I wish there was some more. There's loads of new dialogue in it, but I wish there was more of it. A lot of it is just the Chosen ranting at you, And it's the most cliched stuff that you can imagine them ranting at you.
We're not so different, you and I.
Literally that from the assassin.
Human!
Yeah. You're fighting for your species and I'm fighting for mine.
Oh my god.
That kind of stuff. Which is a shame. And there's this resistance radio, which is a really nice idea, where if you zoom into the bar where you can see your dudes chatting and access your, memorial wall of sadness, there's always, you can hear these radio reports, like, but they're like a bit cringeworthy, stuff like, I really fancy that commander. That kind of stuff. I've never seen him, but he's so good at killing Advent. I was like,
Is this fan fiction?
It's a little bit fan fictiony, yeah, that's a good way of describing it, actually. So that's not so well executed, but it's not really that in your face, so it's not like a much of a bugbear, really.
Does it affect the base building stuff at all?
So that's all the same, and I'm not a fan of the base building anyway in the core game, and it's almost gotten worse because they've added more buildings, but it's still just as annoying to clear the crap fucking space out of the
waiting
place.
for those debris to clear.
And because the same problem that having science feels like it takes ages to research now, because you're doing like 3 or 4 missions, when you might have been doing 1 or 2 before. Clearing space just takes absolutely forever. And it's really annoying how thinly spread the functions are between the rooms. So the expansion has like 3 new rooms, I think. One of them's called the resistance ring. And that's essential because that lets you do covert actions that hunt down the chosen and give you extra supplies. It's just an integral part of the expansion. You've got to build it. You've got to build the guerrilla training school because that's what increases your squad size. So you just have to build that. And then there's stuff like the infirmary, which is a really nice idea because like you can put troops in there, and if they're suffering from psychological elements or too much fighting, which is a new thing in War of the Chosen, you can cure them. Also, it'll halve their healing time. So if you've got like a really vital couple of soldiers, you can put them in there. But that's a whole room, and you look at it, it's like, it's never really going to be worth it compared to all the other crap I have to build. Because you still have to build resistance, comms stuff. There's so much mandatory stuff. It's not, I feel like it's the weakest part of the game, to be honest.
It's funny they have that philosophy of a series of interesting decisions.
Yeah.
And it feels like a lot of those things they're just mandatory, It's not an interesting decision whether to build this, it's just
a gating mechanism.
Yeah.
And a really sluggish one now in War of the Chosen, because the new pacing.
Can you, does it have like custom difficulty settings? Can you adjust the rate of science independently of other things?
Don't believe so.
I have some weird memory of that being an option, but maybe it's just that's what playing on easy does or something.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that. That doesn't mean that.
Oh, and I'm probably just thinking of Civ actually. Cause that's it's quite strange to have an expansion where instead of a new campaign, it's just the old campaign, but with extra stuff seeded in. And the best point of comparison for it really is Civ, which is also for Axis, where, when they're doing an expansion, it's not actually a new, goal or a, campaign. It's you play Civ, but there's a bunch of extra stuff seeded throughout. But XCOM is a bit different in that it is a story that they're a scripted, there are key moments in the story that will always unfold the same way. And so it's maybe a bit more conspicuous to be replaying that.
Yeah. And the expansion does add new story stuff. So there's new cutscenes and they're really good actually. They're really kind of characterful. They do a really good job of introducing the new factions and, the new Chosen at the same time. There's a really good sequence where there's a big standoff on a bridge between the Chosen assassin and the new Resistance members you've just met. Some really good, it's some really nice world building actually. Like, I remember writing one of my kind of first impressions post that it feels like I would read a series of comics set in the XCOM universe now because of all these new, very colourful characters and, a really quite a cool world state where, Resistance fighters battling these really colourful weird aliens is quite a vivid fantasy. I liked it. I think it's good, but I think I had more issues with it than most of the reviews I read, I think.
All right.
Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just really impatient.
What have you been playing?
You have a choice of 2 things. I have been playing Destiny 2, the beta on PC. But last week I was also playing the Pillars of the Earth, which is the sort of point and click Daedalic version of Ken Follett's massive historical novel about building cathedrals in the 12th century. So either of them
that
we
the
can
game.
talk
The
about.
first one. Sorry, second one. I meant second one. That one you just said.
Same kind of genre then.
Pardon? Oh, yeah.
Identical.
It's much of a muchness, really. I've been very much hammering that genre. So I hadn't read the book, but I gather it's tonally a bit different because the book is apparently a lot more relentlessly grim and has other kind of, I think Game of Thrones kind of like some of the brutality from that and like sexual assault and things. And so I think the book is a lot more sort of replete with that, whereas the version that's been made into this game, is more sort of, I think it has taken on board some of the criticism and like rebalanced things for like how it would then come across in obviously a different format, different medium. But yeah, so it's being released as a kind of season. So the section that's currently out is chapters 1 to 7, and then there'll be another 2 chunks to follow. And you spend your time alternating between 3 protagonists. One is a monk called Philip of Gwynedd, and he goes to a priory and finds it in disrepair, and the prior has died, and they're looking to elect a new one and all of that kind of stuff. So there's instantly like that politics there, but also what is going on and why is everything fallen into disrepair and what happened to the prior and all of that stuff. And then you also play as a guy called Tom Builder, who is a master builder who is sort of intent on building a cathedral. Like,
what was
that
name
is
again?
his Tom Builder.
Tom Builder. That's his
Well,
name.
as in he's Tom the Master Builder, and obviously like surnames came about through people's professions and stuff. So he's referred to as Tom Builder at points. And so it starts off with him sort of desperately trying to work out what to do in the woods as his family are sort of struggling, and he hasn't found work for ages and all of that kind of stuff. And the last person is a boy called Jack, who is living in the woods with his mum as a kind of outcast / outlaw kind of duo. And so they kind of meet in various permutations, and there's shenanigans going on with local like landowners and the bishop and all of this stuff. It is one of those sort of historical novels, so it's all very sort of tied into this period of time, sort of maybe the 50 years leading up to in the middle of the 12th century. So I've forgotten I think there's like official title of it. I think it's called The Anarchy in terms of the historical period. So yeah, and it was kind of really interesting because it, obviously the idea that these people or some of these people are going to be building a cathedral is, the linchpin of this stuff. But also there's lots of political and religious political like machinations and plottings, and you are keeping an eye on who you are making allegiances to and little decisions and things like that. One thing that I'm not sure about is how much you actually get to affect what happens, because obviously there's this, hugely well-regarded and well-known book that it plays out from. And so I'm imagining that you can't really make much meaningful, there's not much meaningful decision making unless you start diverging. And I don't know whether it would, so I don't know whether it then becomes more about the nuances that you apply to particular characters, like whether you choose to be nice to fellow monks or whether you choose to be a bit of a Burke, or whether you want to choose to play like the politics game, or whether you want to sort of try and live a religious kind of existence and sort of more of a kind of in keeping with the vows of poverty and obedience and things like that. So
is it done through like a series of conversations? How is it kind of structured?
So it's got that point and clickiness. The interface has been quite stripped down, which I liked, in that, so to take the monk as the example, you'll have him on the screen and you can sort of click to move him around or double click to, quick travel through a door or whatever. And you can left click to talk to people, but you can right click to sort of see what he's thinking, which is kind of interesting because it doesn't give you full sentences. It gives you like snippets of, a response to something. And sometimes they're kind of considered, but sometimes it's like, if somebody's panicking, it'll be the same thought over and over again. And there's a kind of a really pleasing urgency to that. And you can also just sort of left click on a thing and then use it on a person to like ask them about it, like ask them about a particular plot point. And with the monk, you can also click on your little Bible in your inventory and click on a person or a thing and like it sort of discusses scripture a little bit. And I just thought that was quite a nice touch. It's just like a tiny thing, but it was quite sweet. So I found it a lot more easy to deal with than other point and clicks, I'd say. It kind of felt like a good, a nice approach that wasn't too overwhelming and you never have too many billions of things in your inventory that you're suddenly going, oh God, why do I have a pebble?
Just keep using the Bible on them.
Exactly. So yeah, there was a lot of nice things within that. And also it's kind of, an art style that I kind of associate more with, the Usborne books that were aimed at slightly older children, or like, there's a kind of, grim sort of browns and greens and sort of that pale wintry light to it in a kind of like not bright and beautiful way. And I think that's partly because obviously you start in winter, but also because it's a really dark point because there's no electricity, things like you get these huge buildings that...
It's the bloody anarchy, isn't it?
In winter and... Exactly.
I'm not familiar with the source material, but this sounds like really cool setting for an adventure game.
Yeah, so it was, I was really enjoying it, and it's actually quite pacey, because I was also wondering whether it was going to be one of those ponderous things, and I think the first of his books from that series is like, nearly 1,000 pages or so. It was one of those proper tome kind of thing. So I was wondering whether it was just going to get bogged down in itself, but actually they've done, at least so far, it feels like they've done a good job at keeping things moving and keeping it sort of going. Cause I think I got through the 7 chapters in an afternoon, or it would have been an afternoon if I hadn't had to keep dealing with work emails or whatever else. So.
Cool.
Yeah, so I was really interested to see how that went. I reviewed it for RPS, and I did say that one thing I didn't think was flagged up, just because the game doesn't put the PEGI rating on the Steam page, but also because the PEGI rating itself is unclear. So it's kind of like, I just thought it was worth flagging up, is that it does deal with, it makes explicit verbal references to sexual assault and things, in a way that I wouldn't have expected just based on the PEGI warning. Cause it's a 16 plus game, but they just say strong language and realistic looking violence. And so I didn't feel like that quite covered it. And I think it might affect whether some people, either want to play it or want to be in a particular mindset when they play it, or whether they buy it for someone else,
What's it called?
Sorry.
Ken Follett's The Pillars of the Earth is the full title on Steam.
Okay.
And I think that you pay full price for it, but it works as a season pass. So yeah, you don't have to pay that again. I don't think it's just yeah.
How long does it take to build a cathedral?
It depends on the cathedral and your budget and your workforce. So I think in my playthrough for this, I think I ended up setting out the budget for the longer time frame, but with fewer people, because that worked out at an affordable amount for the monk to say yes. I think it should take about 30 years in the game, but there are cathedrals out there that are being still being under construction or reconstruction or renovation. Like, it takes hundreds of years and you're still adding bits and you're always adding bits. So
Sagrada Familia in Spain has got to be one of the longest. It's still not finished. Looks amazing, but
and Canterbury Cathedral is like permanently being like, having the roof fixed or like, they basically work their way around and then have to start again.
It's like your house. You redecorate your bathroom, then you do the living room, and then you do the toilet, and you have to do the bathroom again.
But and there's always like, oh, we'll just add this chapel here, and it has like no bearing on the architecture for the rest of the thing. And then people are like, oh yeah, but we really need a tower, or this thing's falling off, so let's just do it differently. And like the whole thing just ends up. They're amazing jigsaws of stuff.
They're quite monstrous, actually, I find. Just the egos of people who used to build them are just like so, like, and then a different ego would come in and build a tower that just looks really different. It's so strange.
I asked that question because I love hearing about anything that takes longer to make than Heat Signature did. And listening to that whole conversation with the filter of game development in mind there's amazing parallels.
Oh yeah.
Just sort of add one more thing and it's made by these terrible egos.
Sometimes architects would just get like swapped out or would fall off the scaffolding and get horribly mangled. It's
happened a lot with Heat Signature, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Was there any consumption by any chance?
The plague, the restoration of the monasteries.
Another plague.
All of the things. Yeah. So, you've got, 28 more years left to go before...
Yep. I went to see this, stop me if I've told this on the podcast before. I went to see this ship in Stockholm on our way back from Stugan, and we stopped off at Stockholm. And they have an amazing museum devoted to a ship called the Vasa, which is one of those sort of spectacular, ornate battleships you've ever seen. Every inch of it is engraved with beautiful carvings, and it's been restored amazingly well. And at some point in the tour, I asked how long it took to build, and they said 2 years. I was like, fuck. That's less.
Oh, no.
But after they launched it, it sunk within half an hour. It was very, very big, very, very tall.
Oh,
and
wow.
When they opened all of its cannon windows to fire a sort of, celebratory shot to celebrate its launch, and then there was a slight breeze, and because it's so tall, the effect of that breeze on the top of the masts was extreme, and it listed enough that those open cannon windows just let water in, and the whole thing just sunk. And then it stayed at the bottom of the sea for, I think, 200 years. So,
wow.
Fingers crossed for a better launch.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story.
Did you want to talk a little bit about Des Tiny 2, or... I'm just wondering whether, because you played it before, didn't you? You did a preview. So
yeah.
I was wondering whether this beta had proven, had prompted any further thoughts, or whether you'd...
I think the main thing is that, so I played it at the launch event, and they've actually extended that mission a lot since the launch event.
Okay.
So there's a few extra combat encounters and rooms and things in there, which actually brought it to a more satisfying 20-minute length, where I was really worried that in the original Destiny, a lot of the missions were very, very short. In the kind of the fallow years between expansions, they would become you learn every single inch of them, and it wasn't really enough. So I'm glad to see they've extended it a little bit. I've also had more time in the Crucible, which I didn't have much time at the event to do.
Okay.
So that's probably the place where I'm most uneasy about Destiny 2 at the moment compared to my experiences with the first game. But though it's very hard to tell with one map in one mode, obviously. But
how so?
Yeah.
Which one were you playing? Were you playing Control or were you playing Charge?
So in the preview event, I played the new game mode, which is I think it's
Countdown.
which is the kind of Counter-Strike style one where there are bomb placements and you have to go and there are attackers and defenders as Counter-Strike basically. But this is just straightforward Control. I've been playing on the PC beta.
Okay, yeah, because they've got the competitive one, which is
I've not done that one
laying
yet.
a charge and then
I've not done that one yet. But Control is what I always used to play in Destiny 1. That was my kind of comfort food.
Yeah.
And I could just me and Phil and a bunch of people just drop in and play Control after the pub on Friday nights, and that was just a really, really fun way to play PvP. I automatically find it harder with mouse and keyboard, obviously.
Yeah.
But harder than I even thought. I'm not awful at shooters. I'm not very good at shooters, but...
Do you think the key bindings don't make sense?
Those don't work. No. I had to rebind everything. So you've got a dodge move now, like a mid-air dodge move. And
I just can't.
So you're on WASD, and if you want to dodge sideways, where would you put that? Probably on your little finger or thumb, perhaps, so that you could press A or D at the same time.
I'd probably try and treat it as like a strafe, so I'd probably put it on Q, except Q's your grenade.
And it's also your left button, so you can't dodge left if it's on Q. Anyway, they put it on X. So if you want to dodge right, you have to press D and X at the same time. So, it's just a mess. But to be fair, all the key bindings are, rebindable. So I immediately I don't know where the hell they put melee. I think it was on C or B or something.
C.
So
that's on one of my thumb mouse button things.
Yeah, that's what I've done as well.
Is there a crouch?
Shift, isn't it?
Crouch toggle, I think.
Yeah.
Credit to it. Like, there are a lot of options in there to fix it for yourself, but, so I'll probably end up putting the dodge on middle mouse button or something. But yeah, that stuff is a bit weird. It does feel nice though, like once you actually kind of get it set up for yourself. I feel like the mouse looks super smooth. It runs beautifully on my machine at least, and it seems to be very scalable down to very, very low powered machines.
I think Alec made it run on like an integrated
Oh, really?
laptop.
Wow.
That's really impressive. So technically they've done a fantastic job with it, and it looks beautiful. It really looks really, really good. And it's a novelty to simply be playing Destiny at 60 frames per second, actually more like 160 based on how well it was running. And that was wonderful. But I do wonder more about the design of 4v4 as a PvP.
Yeah, I'm not sold on 4v4. Like, some bits of it seem to work, and I wonder whether they're trying to make you have more meaningful encounters with people. Like, if there's fewer people, then there's more likelihood of you ending up in that sort of weird rivalry of like, oh, you've killed me 3 times, I now really want to kill you, or starting to maybe work together because it doesn't just feel like a mash of bodies. And I think I was reading some comment of someone saying that they quite liked it because it wasn't like, it would hopefully be less about people trying to get a high KD because if there's more people on the field, then, you just get people who just want to pick people off and spend their time doing that because it's easier to do it in Control than it is in. Yeah,
you can just camp somewhere with a sniper rifle and about 5 or 6 heads are going to be running past every couple of minutes, right? To get your KD.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they've scrapped KD as a metric. So when the screen flashes up at the end and they give you like a load of stats, including how many people you've killed, how many caps you've done, but they sum it all up in an efficiency rating. Some mystery algorithm that says that I'm 1.38 efficient in this game for some reason. I've no idea what it means.
I wondered whether that was the KD. Like, I keep forgetting to check, like, the maths of it, because I'm wondering whether it's like, if that's still just a KD, it's like,
yeah. I can't see the language. I mean, it still shows you how many people you've killed, so people will still be like rating themselves, comparing themselves on those metrics, which everyone does in shooters.
Oh, for sure.
But they've at least tried to make an attempt to change the language to something that it feels a little bit more like you played this team game well as a team.
Yeah. I think it's just the things that are making me wary are because I cannot get my, because you can't wiggle anything around in a meaningful way by changing stats or picking your loot quite carefully or your armor, like, for what you specifically want to do. You can't spec for a thing, because it's just a beta. It's so impossible for me to tell whether the fact that I find the movement slow, like, it feels really sluggish, but I don't know whether that's a thing over which I will have much control ultimately.
Yeah.
And like, it feels like it takes forever for my space magic to charge up, and I don't know how much I can affect that. Because I get that maybe you want to make, a Nova Bomb feel more like a special event rather than just a thing you have at your disposal every 20 seconds or something. But at the same time, it's a bit like, okay, well, what game are we playing now? Like, if it's going to be a thing that, for example, we play it after the pub on a Friday night, but it feels a lot less rambunctious and a lot more sort of slowed down, then is that the same thing?
I worry that, like, there was, frankly, like, there's the bottom tier of Destiny PvP, which is where I was, where it was just really fun carnage, like, lots of supers going off. And the respawn time was so short, that it didn't really matter if you get killed by a Nova Bomb or some bullshit. You just come back and kind of, try and get your positioning right and have fun. if you wanted to go beyond that, there were options for you in Destiny. You go into more competitive, you go into Iron Banner, you could go into,
like Trials of Osiris,
which is like a really hardcore 3v3, really intense, and, you know, full of people who are really good at shooters. And so it felt like all those levels were covered. I worry that if they've changed the base layer into this more kind of hardcore thing, that I've lost my fun post-pub game.
I wonder whether they would have other options for that, because it's, like I say, it's just so hard to tell with what little is in the thing and not having a sense of how your build affects things. But, you know, because it might just be that Control is now a bit slower and a bit more serious, but maybe they would also have like something that does cater to that, like, you know, as in Control, but, you know, an ultra rapid fire kind of mode of it, or a rotating like brawl kind of thing, because it is ultimately a BattleNet thing now, so the weekly hero brawl is probably going to be coming to this thing.
Yeah, and also there's precedent for that at Destiny 1, where they introduced Mayhem, which was, I mean, given how mad Control was, you know, in pub servers, like Mayhem was just a mess, a really entertaining mess. And Iron Banner Mayhem was just a thing of joy.
What was Mayhem?
Mayhem is basically everyone's superpowers recharge like 10 times the rate or something stupid. So they're just like mad fireballs going off everywhere. Everyone gets to use all their special abilities all the time, and it's just a total bun fight. Like, there's no logic to it.
Imagine being a Radianced Warlock at that point. Like,
I was.
Are you just
you
basically
never die.
a machine gun of like golden light at that point?
It's so much fun. I actually used to love going Radiance as in PvP. Radiance, by the way, is Warlocks used to be able to bring themselves back to life as their special. And when they came back to life, they came back to life on fire and could throw infinite grenades for a period.
Oh yeah.
It's just the ultimate fuck you, basically. Like, you killed me, now everyone's dead on fire.
And also it used to enable a whole bunch of like real cheese strategies for some of the raids. It was like, the enemies stop spawning if you die. And then so you'd have somebody like, you know, who was a warlock, would die and then resurrect after all the enemies had died, and then bring everyone back to life, and you just stroll over into the thing. You're like, yeah, bye.
Yeah, I completely understand why they got rid of the ability for someone to, for free, come back to life in a video game. It caused all sorts of design problems for them. But it was great in PvP because, like, there was some sort of skill to using it. Like, you could wait until they'd turned away and thought you were actually dead and actually surprise them, come back to life. And you could charge someone down, and in that mode, if you fire punch them, you get like an extra health bar on top of your health bar. So you do these mad charges into someone, and they're just like shooting you, then you punch them, get all your health back, destroy them, and then start throwing grenades at all his mates. Really, really fun. I love Destiny.
Yeah, like you'd sometimes like check people's builds beforehand, like in the moments when you were waiting, and then like if you knew that they had Radiance Warlocks on their team, you'd just have to camp the bodies. Like, it's like, for God's sake, just make sure. God, yeah.
It's great.
Or like sometimes people would accidentally like use their super, and you're just like, oh, that's embarrassing. You're just a warlock on fire.
You came on fire. You went on fire too soon. How awkward.
But yeah, so yeah, like it's just one of those weird things where it's like you really feel so unable to judge the full game of the thing. It really is just a beta at this point. I'm like, okay. It
also, like, out in infrastructure terms, so it's using Blizzard's Battle.net platform now. And whereas, like, everyone just has a global account, apparently only match makes you with people in your region.
Well, because you have to select America or Europe for your
Battle.net account
at the moment.
Oh, I see.
So, like, you know how when you can click on the big play button, there's a drop down just above that, like there is for all of the Blizzard games, where you just select your region from it. And I know that Chris was saying that was one of the things which is swaying him towards the PS4 thing, is because, you know, it's an extra layer of faff to be able to then play with your friends, if they are from different regions. Does
it use your Battle.net friends list?
Well, I think so, because it was telling me that you were online.
Yeah.
Tom.
I had a former PC Game editor, web editor, and current Mojang Supremo, Owen Hill, messaging me saying, Tom, where are all the kids these days? Are they on the PS4 or on the PC? And there's no answer to that yet. It's not even out. It's out on PS4 next week, I believe.
6th of September, I believe. And then it's October for us. PS or for
So,
PC.
I mean, I'm buying it on both platforms. It's just that no one's going to
I'll
stop me.
probably end up needing to do...
I wasn't going to try.
I was going to say, I'll probably end up needing to have it on PC for work-related things.
Yeah.
And then on PS4 for post-pub related things.
Exactly.
And for actual, I love my warlock, don't ever let me leave.
Yeah. Lovely warlocks.
Although, I started playing as a Titan today, because I figured I'd try...
You're gonna cheat on your warlock on PC.
Well, this is the thing. I thought, because I was considering a piece about how I will go so far as to try a Titan, but I will never be a hunter. But then I accidentally activated my, the new, Titan super, which essentially turns him into a purple Captain America. And he's got like or she, whichever you go for. You can't control it in the beta, but has like this shield that I think you can throw it and chain it at people. But I had not got as far as mastering that because I hadn't even checked the key bindings for things that you might do with a shield that I didn't even remember I had. And ended up just sort of like inexpertly chasing I think a hunter around, just swatting at him like he was a fly with my shield. And then, like, after this had gone on for a comedically long time, managed to pulverize him against a wall just as the super was running out. And then about 10 seconds later, the PvP match ends, and Shax, who's the guy who is like controlling the crucible and like doing all of this stuff, is just like, yes, this victory really bodes well. But I was like, are you being sarcastic? Were you watching that? This is ridiculous.
Is it the same 3 classes?
It is. They've had all their supers changed, which is an important, like you've got character builds in Destiny and that affects their supers, which can do anything from, you used to be able to bring you back to life, but most of them now have just like a big ranged attack. That seems to be one of the default ones, but a few of them will have like defensive ones. Titans used to be able to throw up like a big energy bubble around themselves, and that would buff people who go into it. That used to be a key part of raids, where a Titan would have to bubble up at a really key moment in order for everyone to get in and charge up and defend against a boss attack, that kind of stuff.
I think they still have it, because when I was playing as the Warlock, it defaults you to the new, your new, abilities and stuff. But I could change it back to the Void stuff, so I could change it back to having Nova Bomb and stuff like that. Although that moved about as slowly as a slug in a hurricane.
Yeah, they've changed it so it's now the size of a planet, and moves about as fast as a planet. Planets move very, very fast.
So, number 1, a slug in a hurricane would move very, very fast if it's picked up by the hurricane. Number 2, planets move incredibly fast.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm imagining the slug trying to go into the hurricane. Shut up, Tom.
No,
I don't need this.
I realised this as I was saying it, how wrong that was. The speed of a balloon, of a gently drifting balloon in a meadow where there's hardly any wind.
Oh my god. It's laughably slow. I let it go, assuming it would do what it used to do, and then
you stand there like, what?
I think we all just stood there watching it really slowly approach its destination as everybody that was at the destination just moved out of the way.
Watched it. I was like,
and we all just went, oh, well, never mind.
Yeah. Still, I'm still looking forward to the game.
Yeah.
That's super.
Yeah.
We all Chai did an English class for, misinterpreting a text that, referred to something as going at glacial pace. And most of us thought that meant it was fast. I don't know why.
Really?
Sounded like it was like sliding or something.
Glacial.
And then it was pointed out to us that it referred to the rate at which a glacier expands or, creeps, which is very, very slow. You could use glacial for the speed of this thing.
Nobody ever uses glacial pace to sort of mean that it's also sort of, absolutely leaving a trail of destruction and ruination in its wake, do they?
Plus, like, glacial is like, that Nova Bomb arrives in 5 weeks' time. So I guess it's slightly slower.
They could mean mints.
Minced over.
Like Fox's glacier mints. Those are good. I haven't had one of those in ages. I forgot about that.
They're nice.
They are.
Hey, did you hear about walnut whips?
Uh-oh. What's happened to walnut whips?
Hang on. Is this that they're not going to have walnut in them anymore?
Yep.
What?
Yep.
Like, someone mentioned this. Was it you? Have
Probably
you been
me.
harping on about this for a while? Okay. So
I mean,
what's
I
happened?
would say I've mentioned it.
What's the haps with the walnut whips? Why didn't we have this in news?
They're taking the walnut out. in fairness to them, they're not calling it Walnut Whip anymore. They're just calling it something else whip.
It's not good enough, Tom.
And they're doing multiple varieties of them. I think there's going to be like a mint one and like maybe an orange one.
Why can't they do walnut?
But because walnuts are really expensive. Everything's getting more expensive.
Can't you market
Brexit,
it as like
probably.
a luxury product then?
Yes, they are doing that. But also I think a walnut crop failed recently. And so prices have kind of particularly spiked for walnuts.
I've got some walnuts downstairs.
To eBay.
Sitting on a fortune.
Yeah, I could make a killing. Or a walnut whip. This isn't about games. Where were we?
This is like a question section, except no one asks us a question.
It's right, I'm editing this week, so that's the way it's going to be cut.
Destiny seemed okay. We have some reservations. I'm really excited about it. You're really excited about it.
It's all good, really, isn't it?
I think it's just that thing of, I think I said in my, when I was writing it up, it's like when you go to the bowling alley and you have to wear their shoes and you really want to be wearing your shoes,
right.
playing as your wizard, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And also I feel like I don't want the cool thing I've had in my life, social thing I've had in my life to go away or become bad. Well, that's my greatest worry. As long as it's okay, I will be satisfied. As long as my friends are still playing it, I can still kind of dip in and have fun with it, then it's all going to be good. From
that basic assessment that I've managed to do, it still looks like it has all of the core components. Yeah. It might be that I play a different mode that isn't Control, or it might be that I get good at this version of Control, or it might be that if we're all playing on console and I stop wondering whether I'm about to hit, like, I don't know, my weird AoE heal that I didn't even know I had, instead of like the bloody shove button,
which is on F1 probably.
Then,
Control F1.
So yes, good things. Multi-good games this week.
I played a little bit of Dead Cells for the first time in a while. It's been updated a number of times since I last played it. And the big new feature is that it has a daily challenge now. I
thought it did before. Or did I imagine that? Or was it about to have one?
Not the last time I played or talked about it. But yeah, it does have now. And they've really gone to town on it. Like it's some effort has gone into this. It's a kind of a redesign of the game. It's one level. I'm pretty sure the setting of the level is random because it was like a Suri one when I played it, and that is not the first level of the game. You are given, it's a very interesting system because Dead Cells is a game that you play through, takes, maybe 2 hours or an hour and a half to complete it if you have a successful run. The sort of theme of each level is the same each time, but the layout of it is randomized, and you, unlock weapons for your whole sort of account, by earning cells and spending them on things in the shop to unlock new types of weapons. And so the daily challenge removes, some of that randomness by obviously giving everyone the same layout, and also they give you the same 2 starting weapons, except that if you don't have them unlocked, you don't get them. So, it gives you 2, and today I had one of those things unlocked and the other one I didn't have unlocked, so I only got 1 weapon. And you can have 2 equipped at the same time, so it's kind of a disadvantage there. It's kind of interesting. I wonder why they've done that. Maybe, they must be worried that people would just play the daily challenge all the time and not care about unlocking anymore, but I don't think that's really the case. I think it'd still be appealing to be able to unlock these things in the main game. Because the disadvantage of doing it the way they've done it is that it means the whole point of daily challenge is it's a great equalizer, right? Everyone's on the same page. In a randomized game, the point of a daily challenge is to take out the random element so that you can compare your performance to friends and say, oh, I actually did well for, even though I died on level 3 in Spelunky, that was actually pretty good for today because everyone died at level 3 or 2.
I'm better than that guy.
Yeah. And this doesn't do that because if you haven't unlocked stuff in the base game, then you're just at a disadvantage. And I've played Dead Cells for 20 hours, so I'm not like a beginner. And today's daily challenge is one of the 2 things I can't have, which is a strange decision. Didn't actually bother me because I don't really, especially, it tends to be you have like a sword or a hammer or something, and that's your main weapon. You're going to be killing 90% of things with that, and your secondary weapon will be more of a special case type thing. And then throughout the level, they've sort of changed what things you find. So instead of finding like
a scroll that levels up your health, or one that levels up your weapons, or one that lets you choose which thing to level up. They just have these universal level up scrolls that level up all three at once. And then they also have like bonus stars and, a sort of special sort of, I don't know, altar type arrangement where there's two weapons that are kind of bound to each other. And if you take one of them, you can't have the other one. So just a very kind of contrived way of presenting you with a choice of weapons. Cause they don't want to give you shops because they don't want you to spend money, because money and score are now the same. Well, they're not the same thing. Money is replaced by score. Anything that would normally get you money gets you score. Bonus stars get you score. Killing things quickly gets you score. And there is a time limit, which is strange, and a boss. And I've only played today's, so I don't know what changes from day to day. But today, at least, you go through this quite big level, and there are signs pointing you towards the boss if you want to get to the boss. And once you enter the boss room, you can't go back out again. And so that's kind of like, I think the goal is like, farm as much of this level as you can within the time limit, then go to the boss before the time limit runs out, and then fight the boss and defeat it. And the boss was I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this right, the unfinished one, which is the boss you get at the first end of the first kind of chapter of the game. And it's just a very annoying boss fight. I've never liked it. I've beaten it several times now, but you just need a particular set of weapons, or when you have a particular set of weapons, it's very easy. If you don't have those particular set of weapons, it's extremely hard. And on this daily, I did not have those weapons. I also didn't really know what I was doing when I walked into that chamber, that I couldn't go back out, and that it would be a boss fight, and that it would be this boss. So what I don't know is whether the boss is always the unfinished one, or whether it's a different one each day or something. But either way, I don't really want it to be that. And I also don't really want a time limit. It was kind of I didn't mind that it was timing me. I could see that the time was ticking up. I didn't really look that hard at the harder. I think it was telling me it was ticking down as well. But, you know, in the back of my head, I was thinking, okay, I will score better if I do this faster, but, I don't care too much about that. I'm going to kill all the enemies in a cool way. I'm going to try and avoid losing health. I'm going to, do what I consider playing the game. On my first try at it, I did that successfully, then went into the boss room and it was stuck in there with the unfinished one who I don't like fighting, and I died. And then the second time through, I thought, okay, you can replay it, which you can't do in Spelunky Daily. And I thought, actually, I'm quite interested in seeing if I can do that better, because I know a lot more about how it works now, and I won't go to that boss this time. And then, so I tried to explore more of the level, and then I just ran out of time. It just ended. I was like, that's not really a great end. I can see why that might be an appealing structure for some, is having a certain limited amount of time to go and sort of get stuff, and then at the end of that time go to the boss and
it feels like it's a trade-off, like one of those things where it's like, okay, well, how much do I know or gamble that I can do with the expertise I have and the decisions that I've made?
Yeah.
But like, it's such a different mental prospect from Spelunky's sort of like, okay, everyone starts completely bare bones, now get as far as you can, or, do as much of this as possible. It's such a different prospect.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a gauntlet, but a time limit doesn't seem to suggest a gauntlet. Like that idea of like comparing progress, like a point score, or a kind of money score isn't what I consider to be like an entertaining way of comparing my progress.
Yeah, that was it was a failing of Spelunky's daily challenge as well, which is it only ranked you by money, and often you would do better if you died earlier because you just had a lot of money on you. You hadn't had a chance to spend it yet. Whereas if you're playing the game to have fun, when you have money and there's a shop or something, you would spend that money and buy cool stuff, and that would plummet you in the scoreboards.
Yeah.
I'd want to see, like, for Spelunky, I'd want to see my friend's loadouts, what they had when they died, and kind of, because that implies something about their journey or what they were using. I didn't want to watch them because, like, a lot of people recorded their Spelunky dailies for a while, didn't they? And I loved watching.
Including Mark Laidlaw.
Yeah. And those are always really fun. I love watching, like, Tom's and Graham's. It was really, really nice.
And Paul actually did some interesting ones, because he used to, like, get people to challenge him to talk about particular topics. So I remember he did one about Billy Connolly or something, and was just, like, chatting away while he, dealt with bats and things like that.
Really
which
awesome.
Is kind of...
Yeah, a lovely little community sprang up around that
Yeah, but I always used to skim read, not for where my position was in relation to other people in the way the game would, but I always sort of checked whether anyone had died before me. I was always checking for like which level it was, whether it was, is anyone else on 1.1?
It was really fun when there's a daily where, you know, you see like a scary spike pit on 1-1 and you get past it and then you get to like, you know, the jungle or the ice world or something, and then when you finally see the scoreboard, you just see a load of 1-1, 1-1. I know what got you.
Yeah, so I think that was like, yeah, that was really cool. There's something feels off about what you're saying, and I don't know whether I'm just reading into it based on the fact that you sort of don't sound enthused, but...
Yeah, it is just a score. I'm 3,000th today. I don't know what the hell that means. It doesn't mean anything to me. I guess I can't really blame it for the fact, well, I can't tell whether it ever shows you what your friends got. It will show me the global leaderboard and that's it. There's no other option for me. That might be because none of my friends have played today's daily, which wouldn't surprise me. But that's, you know, that's what I want from it, is I want to see how I did compared to my friends.
Do you know what was good for like leaderboards and things? Devil daggers.
Oh yeah.
Like being able to see what someone did for that 6 minutes and just being like, holy what?
Yeah,
that was just like the whole game was just one scoreboard, right?
Yeah, I think
it wasn't like a different daily
been...
challenge.
I think, no, but like you had the global one and you had your friends one, that kind of thing. But it was just quite nice to like be able to see other people's playthroughs by default. You know, you'd be able to watch it in game, right?
That's the dream.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the dream. Actually recorded what people did and you could download them.
Yeah, and like that was just really cool. And obviously other games it would be a massive like, you know, resource drain because Devil Daggers was so unforgiving and it was like you weren't going to have a half-hour playthrough, were you? But so yeah, but I really liked how it did that. It seemed really elegant and you know, but obviously it was measuring something that was very much an endurance challenge, and that was the point of the game. It wasn't trying to do...
Yeah, XCOM 2 War of the Chosen adds a challenge mode, but I haven't had a chance to check it out because it only went live when the game was released yesterday. So I'm going to check that out over the next few days. If
different
that's
challenges on different days? Or?
Yeah, it implies there's some online component, but I've not had a chance to actually see how it's structured. So that would be an interesting design challenge to how to make XCOM 2 a shareable weekly challenge. Probably wouldn't be a daily. So yeah, that's interesting. I'll check it out. Shall we do questions?
Yes. Let's start with a question from Duncan. Dear Creighton Crowbar, first off, thanks for the great pod. I recently played the IKEA pancake making VR game, and in spite of how terrible that game should be, me and some friends all found it to be one of the better VR experiences we've had, and had a great time playing it. My question is, have you ever played any game that, even though all signs suggest it would be awful, ended up being very fun to play? Thanks, and keep up the podding, Duncan.
I know that Chris Donlan is a big fan of that IKEA game. I'd have to go all the way back to Rise of Nations, which I did not think was just not my genre at all. I was only into RTSs if they had robots and sci-fi and stuff. But I was disc editor for PC Gamer, and so I had to play all the demos that I was going to put on the disc, and I played the demo of that, and that was an especially good demo. And it was a especially good tutorial for the game. And yeah, ended up totally hooked on it and really got into that game, and then, you know, even played Rise of Legends later when it did go fantasy. And it was cool.
And Tom, you were mentioning the pre-Kern thing, which I will see if I can dig out what that actually was.
So a few episodes back, in the episode called The Sum of All Things is Quern, I talked about Quern, which I suppose is one of these games. Basically, occasionally I just play something that Steam recommends me. And there was one about skiing, tribe style, which also had platforming, but also had like, almost like portal gun mechanics. And it is like super basic, but just basically quite entertaining, even though it looks dreadful from the outside and from its Steam page. I honestly can't remember what it was called. So I have to dig through the archives for that one.
I remembered thinking I would like to play that, and then promptly walked out of this room and never thought of it again.
Had a really forgettable name as well. The fact that I'd forgotten it, I played it and apparently enjoyed it. It's not a good sign.
Basically, I wanted to include this question so that it would remind me to check what that game was so that I could play it.
Yeah. I'll put it in the show notes.
Excellent. The next question is from Mark, who starts, Dear 10 print, open speech marks, crate and crowbar, close speech marks, semicolon, 20, go to 10. I have ended up spending more time on the computer at work, and following Tom's suggestion from a while ago, have picked up an Xbox controller for the PC for the first time. However, I haven't used a controller regularly since I had a PS1. Any suggestions on some good games where I can learn how to use a controller? Thanks, Mark.
I think Spelunky is a good one. I learnt that on keyboard. You know, I played the PC version on keyboard 1,000 times before I ever played the Xbox version, and so I was very resistant to using it on a gamepad. But pretty quickly came to see the benefits of doing that, and now only play it on a gamepad, and it's really good. I also really like, I think, Batman Arkham Asylum or Arkham City. That's, you know, one of the best combat systems ever made, and also really suits a gamepad really, really well. It's all about those 4 face buttons, and, all the combos are just combinations of those 4 things. So it really feels designed for a pad. And it's also a game where, like, it's incredibly satisfying to get it right. You can play, you know, just very easy challenge rooms. You can just play the combat by itself in the challenge rooms. And, one of the most basic ones, the enemies will never have any of the particularly challenging, types of kit. And so you can just practice there, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I was going to say Crypt of the Necrodancer, which I think has a controller mode. I assume it does. But that's all about timed movements to the beat of a rhythm. So that's a good way of kind of teaching you, like, almost, you know, coordinated button presses, but without the pressure of something like a beat 'em up or something, which requires very complex inputs. It's just direction, action, to the rhythm of a beat that grows increasingly more complex as you play through the game, which hopefully might teach more kind of dexterity as you play.
Oh, you just reminded me there's more news. The Crypt of the Necrodancer folks have announced a new game called, brilliantly, Industries of Titan.
Oh yeah.
Because it's about
beautiful
industrial factions on Titan, which is a moon of Jupiter?
I'm not sure.
There's that one planet that has all those moons. Has a lot of them.
It's either Jupiter or Saturn.
Or Jupiter. It might
I think
be
it's
Saturn.
Jupiter. I don't know.
Oh wait, I think, so the immediate comparison point for this game is Off-World Trading Company, which is set on Mars. Off-World Trading Company's expansion is called, as we all know, somebody remind me?
On-World Trading? I don't know.
I played it. I want to say it's set on Io, which I feel like is a moon of Jupiter.
It's a moon
of...
I'm gonna
look
it up.
Primary school or secondary school or something, I did like a sort of booklet about all the moons of, I want to say, Jupiter.
Io was one of them. Of Jupiter.
Hooray!
What about Titan?
I bet Titan is as well.
It's got to be Jupiter.
Or it could be Uranus.
Come on, Jupiter.
It's a moon of Saturn.
Oh,
so
Saturn.
I was right on
Nowhere
that
near. Shit, sorry.
I should have known this because Destiny's isn't like Titan a Destiny 2 moon.
So Titan is where Zavala of the Titans goes to like mope about the destruction of the tower.
Did that wizard come from that moon?
I think that was our moon, unfortunately, but maybe more wizards come from other moons. Maybe
I was watching Game of Thrones recently and I thought it's not total coincidence that Peter Dinklage's acting of that line was terrible and Peter Dinklage's acting of certain lines in Game of Thrones is also terrible. He is a great actor at times, but he's also got this weird sort of
his
detached
accent, I still haven't figured out.
Fact voice that comes out.
I don't know, like, I really like him in Game of Thrones. Like, some people really don't like his accent, I've read, and I'm
Yeah,
so...
it's very over-enunciaty.
Well, I've got such a tin ear for accents that I didn't pick that up. I was just like, oh, I didn't, okay. Sure. Maybe. But yeah.
I like it. I find him likable. But there are just been the odd line where, particularly, I think maybe if he's off screen, it might be more pronounced. That it just sounds like a person really enunciating every word.
Yeah. On the controller side of things, I would also suggest maybe games that have controller support that are maybe a bit more low pressure, just if you want to get used to, navigating using the analog stick and like which buttons are usually the ones that you press to input, an option or something. Just because that means that you won't be up against the clock for any reason or, with skill challenges or something. And also, if you respond well to skill challenges, quite a few of the fighting games have, like modes where you can learn the moves, some better than others, and I'm not well placed to say which they are, but some of them will just sort of, again, they'll have that arena mode where you can just go again and again and again, and it'll tell you which inputs you need until you've actually got them in your muscle memory. But fighting games are such a specific thing, and I wonder whether he's more talking about like just where your finger knows which one is the back button without needing to look down, usually.
I wonder if there are any good shooter games that could teach you, because like that's a different skill entirely. Twin stick shooters,
Yeah, that's
it's from a
true.
first person. Like that's
I actually got on really well with Dishonored 2 on gamepad because it's not a shooter. There is a crossbow and you can aim it at people's heads, and that is advantageous to do in some situations, but you can also play the game entirely without doing that, and that was a good combo for me. I can aim if I have to, but I'm not that quick at it. And also it's a stealth game, so you can hide in the shadows for as long as you like and line up that perfect shot. And so that was a good way to kind of get better at that stuff.
Maybe some physics puzzlers as well, because that's
a portal, I suppose.
Yeah, like just where you're picking stuff up and like running around. I think that helps you get your bearings and get familiar with bits and pieces as you play, like use it as a play space. So the next question is from Hugh. Dear Crate and Crowbar, gaming is generally associated with the younger generation, and most gamers are below 40. As current gamers grow older, will we see more games targeted at an older audience? What sort of games would older people like/dislike? Does the increased risk of RSI and slowed reaction times mean older people can't play certain games? I should clarify that my question concerns current gamers 50 years in the future, not just current older gamers. Thanks for the great pod. Yo. P.S. Tom Francis has mentioned multiple times on the pod that he would like a 4X game that combines the many resources into one. The mobile game The Battle for Polytopia does just that, combining production, research and happiness, etc. into one resource called Resource. It is worth a look. Thank you, Hugh.
A resource is worth a look.
That's the exchange rate. One look.
That sounds pretty extreme. I wasn't actually looking for one that combined them all into one resource.
Well, that's what you've got, Tom. You take it or you leave it.
I do leave it. I leave it to one day make my own, which just sensibly collapses some of the 18 resources into like 4.
Look, Hugh has provided you
so
with a solution
at least have some
to your problem.
Like I feel like happiness and growth and culture maybe all could be merged, and
That's an interesting philosophy you've got over there.
yeah, makes sense. I think Writing History bears this out.
Indeed.
What was the first part of the question again?
It was about how we perceive gaming to change for older people / people now 50 years in the future.
Interesting question to think about, like what, we 3 will want in 40 years time.
Just a virtual reality fucking hamper. I can press a button to sort of sway a little bit every now and then, but otherwise, just a completely passive experience. Yeah. It's just a lovely kind of holiday.
Well, definitely, today's, age groups, divide into, the older ones will respond better to games that don't have strong time pressure or high skill requirements. And even just on apart from preferences, there's also just a kind of hard limit on how good, a person of a certain age can be at a certain game. You know, in professional StarCraft, if you're like 25, you're past it. You're like, even with the benefit of all your experience and brilliance, from years and years and years of doing this, which is a huge advantage, you're just so old at 25. You're so old that your nerves and reactions have dulled.
Military service, like, has to be performed.
Yeah, it's quite an awkward thing in Korea because, a lot of the people in their StarCraft Prime have to spend mandatory years in the army, and then they come back and they're not as good as they used to be.
Isn't that what happened with Boxer? But like, he then came back and was good, but in a different way.
Yeah.
Something like that. I can't remember.
I think he's not a huge deal in like StarCraft 2 at least. I don't know what the StarCraft 1 scene is like, but Fake Boxer was very good. And then he renamed himself Marine King Prime.
So
I think he's something else now. I think he's changed his name again.
So I feel like I would prefer to have some demographics in front of me answering this, just so I could check the assertion of, because I don't think gaming is lazily associated with the younger generation, I suppose, but also there's a heck of a lot of people over the age of, 30 playing a whole bunch of stuff on mobile. It's just that it tends to get written off. And I think that maybe that's a thing that will hopefully be a distinction that holds less water, because I don't think it's a helpful one, like this idea of like, oh yeah, but you're only playing a hidden object adventure on your iPad, that's not gaming, or, and I'm not saying that that's what Hugh was saying in asking this question. I'm just sort of pointing out that that's a change that I think I would like to see. But also I would be interested in whether in, 30 years, whether we are more interested in experiences that we remember as being fun now, like whether we would want to play, Destiny 9 or something. And then, everybody who is 30 or 20 or whatever at that point is just interested in something so far beyond what we care about. It might as well be,
Technology moves on to the extent that we will be alienated in sequence by
and we'll have a different strand of nostalgia to everybody who is sort of that younger demographic then. And, there's also stuff like your skills might swap out as well. Because I remember, I think, an interview that Chris did an interview with one of the older players in the Dota scene, and his reflexes are obviously, or not obviously, but like, that's one of the arguments that has been made for like, oh, is that, do you have a shelf life in this game? But like the counter argument is that that experience then brings a better overview of the game and like, better strategic choices and better like macro level play, that kind of thing. So it's kind of maybe you would move on to playing different roles within a similar genre, you'd sort of be more interested in different things,
Yeah.
Kind of interested in, a generation like ours that's grown up with gaming just being within our culture mainstream, but not represented within the mainstream culture, if you know what I mean. So not TV programs, gaming isn't in newspapers.
Are you saying that Pixels is not,
I'm saying that that's not good enough, damn it. We
what do you want, Tom? How many moons on how many sticks?
There's been such a gap in like our perception of, games as a culture that is just not reflected by the medium, where the gatekeepers are much older and frankly just don't have an understanding in many cases of this culture. And I'd be interested to see how wider perceptions towards games change as our generations move into those positions, and whether we kind of in turn alienate earlier generations with their new thing, whether that's just a cycle that happens.
I wonder if we'll still be getting like people writing that op-ed of like, what is an e-sport and is it here to stay?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we'll definitely be reading that in fucking 2050.
The other thing that I would just say is I've spoken to a few people who do feel, or who self sort of describe as feeling older than, you know, the audiences that are usually at a games convention or whatever, or they're there and they're interested, and, you know, some are even working in the industry. And something that has come up in a couple of those conversations just casually is a sort of, you know, wishing that there was more representation of that, you know, like it's not that like they would like an old people game that old people can play. It's very much a kind of, I'm interested in the same things. It's just that, you know, where is anybody who looks like me? And I think that's a refrain across so many, like, demographics that just aren't, you know, desirable from an advertiser's point of view. You know, it's like they're not going to be put on a cover art thing. They're not going to like be on a bunch of posters that you can easily shift to people, or like, you know, use in your marketing drive in a really obvious way. And so, you know, like anybody who falls outside that is, I think, often, or, you know, I don't want to speak for people, but I'm often like, okay, there's no one who looks like me in a game, you know, there's no one who looks like, you know, a bunch of my friends. There's no one who, and so I think that is another thing. I think perhaps as the people playing games get older, the people making games get older. And so maybe that's the point at which we will see, you know, just some better representation as well. 'Cause like, we've already had like the so-called dadification of games, as well as like a bunch of men making games have suddenly
have children.
like, and have suddenly gone, I would like games that either feature people more like me at this stage of my life, or that I can play with my kid. You know, like it brings around a shift in, you know, what the creators are more interested in doing. So that might be another thing.
You don't see her close up much, but the main character in Heat Extinguisher is a 6-year-old woman. And a thing I struggle with is I don't really believe that people who the kind of games I make tend to the kind of games I want to make work best if you have a load of like interesting, clever ideas. They're supposed to bring those clever ideas out of you if you have them. And if you do have them, you should have a great time with the game. And I don't think that those correlate strongly with people who are also very skillful at, you know, clicking the button really quickly, or aiming the mouse really expertly, or pushing the sticks on a gamepad really well. And so I'm trying to make games that bring out the cleverness in you, but don't require skill. And it's tricky because both of those things, both challenges to both of those skills inspire the same kind of intimidation. People, if you tell them this is a hard mission, they think, oh shit, I can't do a hard mission, I won't do it. And with Heat Extinguisher, one of the challenges we've had is that, like, most of the cool, interesting experiences I've had with the game are when I'm up against an enemy that I don't have the tools to defeat. He has a shield. I don't have any of the gadgets that defeat a shield. And that's when I start looking at, well, what do my gadgets do? Can it teleport me over there? Can it get that guy out the window? Can I break a window? Can that guy be in the room when I break the window? And that's when all the interesting stuff happens. But for a certain kind of player, it will just be interpreted as, oh, I just can't do this. I just don't have the tool, and it's just hopeless. I have to give up. Because they've been trained by games for so long that, you know, it might just be a test of skill, or it might be just a test of levels, or it might just be you don't have what you need for this, and so you fail.
Or it requires a very particular, like, way of thinking. Like, strategy games, I always feel instantly, like, just a tiny bit put off. Like, I'll always, you know, watch the trailer or something if it's been recommended, or if I'm keeping up with the news. But as soon as someone says strategy, I'm always like, that's not the part of my brain that makes this a fun experience. You know, it's like, I will send that to Adam. So and even if it is something that I would love, it takes a bit more to get over that hurdle. So yeah. But again, maybe that would be like one of the better things about a generation that has grown up with gaming as very much not just the norm, but as, you know, a key part of like the culture and just so pervasive and so sort of all encompassing, that, you know someone who's into sort of all of these different things, and it just gets sort of more and more, I don't know, I don't want to be like, and then a utopia somehow. But maybe
it's quite
that
exciting
would...
though. I do agree. Yeah, I do agree that, like the audience for games isn't going to go away amongst our generation. Like people are going to grow up and have kids and stuff and, go into different phases of their lives. But I think people like, for our generation, at least maybe in like among our friend group, games are just a part of the way we relax now. So we're going to expect that. And there's going to be a market for that for as long as...
And part of the way we communicate as well, so much activity on, you know, platforms like Itch or platforms, you know, anywhere that you can upload a thing and share it with people, you know, and all of the game jams, like too many to even keep track of. Like, you know, there will be game jams in, you know, nursing homes. There will be game jams in, you know, like, there's a game jam for everything.
Game jams on the beaches.
So, and game jams in their coffee shops. Yeah, and so on and so on. But yeah, interesting question. The next one is actually an email, which I think, was in response to something Chris was wondering. It is from friend of the podcast, Zach Johnson.
Jack Zonson.
Jack Zonson.
Star Wars name.
Hello. Obviously a good friend of the podcast. Zach Johnson. So during the first year of Kingdom of Loathing, we had a lot of pockets of players all over the English-speaking world, including a boarding school in Melton Mowbray, UK. I think it was one of those kids around November of 2003 who sent a message to us reading, "Will we get Crimbo prezzies?" We looked up all of those words and then decided it would be funny to celebrate Kingdom of Loathing's first Christmas by giving everybody an item called Crimbo prezzy, establishing Crimbo as Loathing's official celebration of the birth of Christ. Thanks for podding, everybody. So yeah.
Chris was baffled because West of Loathing refers to Christmas as Crimbo, which he thought was a British thing, and West of Loathing is an American thing, and also, I guess, set in a place that must be an analogue of American. Like, it's a Wild West game, and Wild West is absolutely about America.
They didn't really have a white Crimbo in the sort of the hot
I'm dreaming
plain.
of a white Crimbo.
Gosh, I'm starting to think maybe we should send some very British emails to more developers
Yeah.
just
That's
to
an
get more
excellent plan,
things in
Seed some old slang.
in games. I'm not sure which.
I mean, the real bombshell here is that Americans also don't have the word prezzies.
True, yeah.
How have you survived without prezzies?
Bombshell.
That's weird.
It's merely making do with gifts, as you call them.
Yeah, I mean, do they call them presents at all?
I've been assuming so. Now that you say it, I don't know
Or
for
they've
sure.
been presenting to
They
each
do
other all these
say,
years.
like, gift is definitely the American way of saying it, and present is the UK way of saying
Gift
it.
is a lovely word, actually. I really enjoy the word gift.
They also use it as a verb, right? You can
Yeah.
gift and regift.
Oh yeah, you can re-gift.
Oh, you can regift.
Can you,
But you need to keep track of that re-gift though.
You can't re-prezzy.
That's sure.
can you de-gift? Just
Take it
sort of
back.
Steal it.
So what you should do, like you note where you put it down when you came in, and then if they annoy you, you leave and you take it with you.
de-gifted.
You can, like, if you go to a wedding and they get divorced during the wedding, you could probably de-gift.
Well, I think that's the thing, because, like, I think some people, like, I sometimes read agony aunt columns and things, and you do read about awful sounding friends and relatives who, you know, if something happens or if someone gets jilted, that they want to know whether they'll be getting their gift back, you know, and you're like, wow, okay, like, I mean, I appreciate that sometimes it's a really expensive thing, or like, maybe it's you know, you do want to know, but like, there's tact involved, surely.
Not the best time to start.
No,
Pushing.
but now I'm just wondering which British slang we should we should try and propagate in these different places, or whether it would just be words that we don't think of as weird, which then makes it really hard. But then, because the other thing is I seem to speak as if I'm from a time warp anyway, so every now and again Chris would just be like, what the hell are you talking about? And I'll just be like, what did I say? What was weird about that? Because I remember I was talking about I was going to say hoodlums, as if that was more up to date. A bunch of hoodlums. But I referred to them as hobbledehoys, and
Oh my God.
delighted. And he was just kind of like, oh my God, what are you talking about? Which century is this? And I was like,
Phrase.
oh, so we're not saying that anymore. Okay, fine.
I don't think we're saying hobbledehoys.
It's just there are so many really delightful words out there, and I think that, they need saying.
There's the modern version is hoodlums.
All goblins and kobolds in games need to be renamed hobbledehoys. Is that hobbledeboys?
Gobbledy-
Hobbledehoys, even better.
Gobbledehoys and cobbledehoys.
One's more powerful than the other. It's like, yeah,
What's the thing in the Fable series? There's a hob something. The hobs? There's HOBBES, right? Like, they're those little goblin-y things. I wonder if that comes from a similar...
I think they're moblins in Zelda.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Huh. But yes, that is I like that
They should be
anecdote.
hobbledehoys.
Thank you for sending it in, Zach. That was nice. So the last thing that I have in my bag o' mail, is from Aidan, which says, "Hi all, I have a grudge." Yes, love a grudge. I have a grudge against single-player games whose main menu cursor position does not default to the continue option. When I boot up a game, I almost always want to continue my current save, not start a new game. Hollow Knight was a recent offender. You can call me Grudge Dread, but I think this needs to go in the book. Thanks, Aidan.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also had an annoying thing lately where, I guess this was on Lost Legacy DLC for Uncharted, which is a PlayStation game, not a PC game, but it has a stupid save slot system. And, I had saved and I'd only made one save that day. But when it presented me with the load game screen, I assumed it defaulted to the one that was most recent, or at least the only one that had happened in the last week. But I was wrong. And so when I clicked OK, it actually loaded a save from like a week ago when I was in a totally different part of the game. It took ages because I had to load all the assets for that part of the game, which is reasonable. But yeah, it could have defaulted to the fucking latest one. My actual grudge with menus is related, which is I fucking hate it when moving the cursor around changes the position of the menu items. All the Crysis games do, well, actually, Crysis 2 onwards do this. And quite a lot of modern games do it. It's like they obviously consider it like a fancy polish thing, but it is just fundamentally worse than if you just left them in where they are, because you move the mouse in one direction, on these, you make like a sort of tight feedback loop of visual decisions based on, the input that's coming to your eyes of like, oh, I need to move my mouse this far down to get to that point. And as you do, the whole menu itself tilts up and they move faster. And so now you've gone past it and you've selected the option below it and now it doesn't work.
I can't think of a
So
single
fucking
game
irritating.
where I've seen that happen.
Yeah, Crysis 2 is a good example. Actually, a good example of this is Destiny 1, where you've got a pad, and if you know you're going in a certain direction and it's moving at a consistent speed, then it's actually a good thing to have, because you're getting to where you want to quicker.
Huh.
They do an interesting thing with the Destiny menus, or the interface, on the original, in that I went to a whole talk about this, and they do interesting things like, your mouse moves at a faster speed, but then when it goes over something that you might want to click on, it slows down, and it's just lots of little touches like that make the options kind of sticky, but in a way that you can predict and that is useful to you, and that you get where you're going with the cursor more quickly. But I wonder, like, that's one thing that I forgot to check on the PC, is whether they need to even do that, because obviously on a gamepad you wouldn't need to, because obviously It's a case of, I mean, on a gamepad you do need to do that because you're moving slower because of how the cursor works, but when it's a mouse you can zip across the screen, so you don't want things to be moving because you need that predictability.
I would have noticed it if it was annoying. So if it's ever so slight, then I would have noticed it.
I would have noticed it if it was annoying, but I don't know whether they've done an interesting other thing that I'm not noticing. So now I really want to go back and check.
Yeah, it's amazing how many games have copied Destiny for console pad controls since then, because Destiny also has the thing where when you're clicking on a thing, a little circle appears, almost like a little loading bar. So it's like double checks whether you're really wanting to click on this thing. And it's only like a split second or two.
It lasts longer on more important items.
Yeah.
So you have to press it for longer if you are, for example, dismantling a really like high value weapon or something, and that's to make sure that you can't do it by accident and you have to really mean it. Whereas for like, you know, dross that you'll have just picked up as you wander around, like it's a lot quicker, which is
that seems
so smart. Yeah.
So like No Man's Sky has that delay thing, but it's really annoying because it's the same on everything.
It's the same on everything, and it's too long on everything.
Yeah, and there's so many things you want to do. You just need to do this all the time. You just have to move things from your inventory to other places all the fucking time. And it takes at least a second each time. And yeah, what's strange to me about that is implementing that progress bar thing is a certain amount of work. That's quite difficult. Making that adjust to an importance metric that you set is trivial. I can do that in like 10 minutes. It's so easy to set that value and so easy to have it respond to that. And it seems like, I don't know if they did copy it from Destiny, but if they did, they missed the important part.
Yep.
But yeah, I feel like that is a definite this can go in the book.
Yeah.
Good.
Solid grudge.
Good grudge. Well done.
I'm auto-approving my menu moving in response to cursor grudge.
Oh yeah, no,
that
can be like a little subheading. But you wanted to revisit a previous.
Yes. So Kane previously wrote into us with a good thing about substituting certain words in game names. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what his example was, but a person on the internet has mentioned in our episode discussion room of our Discord channel. Is that the right words? Channel? Room? I don't know.
Yeah.
It is Discord server, perhaps?
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll give you the details of that. No, we won't. We'll give you a website where you can get the details of that. And he has some more suggestions for, basically, it's words that if you replace these in a game title, it's funny. So the one I suggested last week was, replacing war with what. Person on the internet suggested replacing battle with cattle. The examples, cattlefield, cattlefront, cattletoads. Age with ape, dragon ape, ape of empires, ape of wonders, arcape, rock of apes. Dead to dad. Dad space, left for dad, dad rising, dad island, dad are alive. And then red to bread. Examples, bread alert, bread faction, my favorite, bread orchestra. Then finally, by combining the last two, you can transform Rockstar's Cowboy series into Bread Dad Redemption.
So, right, I'm on board with the dad thing. But like, was it ever specified that they had to rhyme? Because I really do think that we're putting too much thought into a lot of this, and that replacing a lot of keywords with the word bum is hilarious. Like, I feel like maybe we've just made this too complicated for ourselves.
But they don't already have...
Like, Island of Bums. I mean...
What is that based on?
I don't know, I couldn't think of the game.
You just made up a game.
Remembered.
Coming out in 2019. Pip Software.
Sequel to Avocado Pusher.
Recording in the office on Chris's PC, and just before the podcast, Pip changed Chris's desktop background to a picture of a cartoon bum. I think it's perhaps been, sizzling in your subconscious for this entire time, Pip.
Yeah,
we'll all be looking at a big pink screen that says butt crack on it.
It does.
Labeling a cartoon butt crack. It's also JPEG compressed really badly and stretched to, like, I'm standing about sitting about 6 feet away from it, and even from here, the JPEG compression is...
Yeah, but you can see the bum and you can read the text, and that's
I can.
really all
There's
I'm
no
after.
avoiding that. There's literally no avoiding that.
Mistaking it for anything else that
No
might
way
be
to not see
happening.
that.
Last week, or whenever I last did the podcast, we spent the entire time looking at a bunch of XCOM men in hot pants. Because we were talking about the XCOM propaganda generator thing. And that was the one that happened to rest.
X-bum. There you go.
Yep, it's pretty strong.
There you go. You see, you couldn't stop laughing. Bum watch.
See, I think what works about the ones that are closer to the original is that the humour comes from how close they are to the original.
The Bum 3.
I don't even know what you're
What does that
parodying.
The Witcher.
Oh, for God's sake. It could have been Half-Life 3, really.
No, because then it wouldn't have been the.
Yeah, fair enough.
Got you there.
X-Wing versus Bum Fighter.
There you go.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Marvel versus Bumcom.
Nice.
You see?
So if anyone at home can think of their own answers to this, it's a much simpler challenge in many ways than the one that was posed last week. You can contact us and
Easier, less artful, less funny.
Less funny.
less artful.
It's definitely less artful. More bums, though.
Can't argue with that. If you want to send us things like that, but preferably not.
League of Bums.
You can send us questions. Why not Bum of Legends?
Exactly, why not?
Why
League
indeed?
Bum Legends.
Bum of the Ancients. Defense of the Bums.
See?
Tom was so deeply unimpressed by this. It's hilarious.
I'm throwing these out as counterexamples, but they're being interpreted as positive examples.
Counter-Strike Bum Offensive. Come on. This is gold.
I just feel you lose some of the cleverness appeal.
What?
Subtly.
Bread Orchestra.
Bread Orchestra is clever, damn you.
Bum Orchestra. That's hilarious.
You could send questions to us. Questions at crateandcrowbar.com. And grudges of that sort. If you want to join in that Discord thing we mentioned, we don't know the URL, but it's on our website. And our website, we do know the URL of that. That's crateandcrowbar.com.
Bumcraft. World of Bumcraft.
Mm-hmm. I'm hearing all the words. You can back us on Patreon, like many generous people do, which makes much of this possible. Patreon.com/crateandcrowbar. You can watch our videos. This podcast is available in video form at youtube.com/crateandcrowbar. But also we do, the Bloodborne playthrough.
Every Sunday a new episode of us being bad at Bloodborne goes. You enjoy that?
Blood Bum.
Ooh.
That sounds gross.
My dog had that once. Anyway, let's finish here.
Is there any other URLs we need to give out?
Have we done the YouTube?
Yes.
Twitter?
No. Twitter.com/crateandcrowbar is where we are. You can follow us there and be informed of new episodes. We more or less only tweet about new episodes, or sometimes when we need questions, we'll tweet that out. And you can also, at us questions there. Although, I don't think we read from that. We didn't check that list.
touch and go with it.
I didn't look at that. Because,
So,
quite
if
frankly,
you did that this week, it was
too
a waste.
busy setting a bum as Chris's home
There's a theme to Pip's occupations this week.
Yeah, do email us your questions. I think that's probably the best way for us.
Can we say that? I like questions at crateandcrowbar.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to follow us individually, I am at Pentadact, PENTADACT. Tom S is...
At BCG Ludo, it's LUDO.
Pip W is...
I am at Philippa War, which is PHILIPPAWARR.
And I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for listening, everybody.